This is That Guy Jig Sports Podcast. I'm him, JIG. Subscribe, rate, and review. Amazon, Apple, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcast. Check us out. And don't forget about that Instagram at That Guy Jig. The NFL draft is over. We know where everybody is going. We just watched billionaires play fantasy football right in front of our eyes. It was a keepers league. You watched it. So for everybody who says fantasy football isn't real, then what is the NFL draft? What is the NFL draft? Today's episode, I'm going to give you my top 5, and I'm going to give you my shit drafts. I'm going to give you my top 5, and I'm going to give you my shit drafts because there was plenty of both. There was plenty of both. And you know what? There was a lot of in between. There was a lot of in between. There's a lot of teams that did some great things, and that did some things where you were just like, what are you doing? How can you follow that pick up with that pick? And then there was some teams where you just had to look at the overall picture. You had to look at the overall picture of what they did. So we're going to start with our veggies first. We're going to start with the bottom 5, and we're going to look no further than the Atlanta Falcons. They start off the day by picking Michael Penix. And to me, when I look at this Michael Penix pick, I know everybody wants to use logic. I get it. But there's a part of me that just thinks that they forgot they were on the clock and they did no research. They did no due diligence. And they just said, fuck it, take a quarterback. Because that's the only thing that truly makes sense. That's the only reason it truly makes sense to me. There's no way they sat around all draft and said, we're going to pay Kirk Cousins $100 million to come in here and lead this team coming off an Achilles injury. And now we're going to draft a quarterback and we're going to have him sit for 2 years, 3 years. I mean, what are we doing? I know Patrick Mahomes sat. I know Jordan Love sat. And I know people like to say, well, it gives it time to develop. Well, when you're drafted number 8 overall, you don't need time to develop. It's you develop on the field. You don't develop on the bench. Not when you're a top 10 pick. I'm sorry. And then when you look at this overall draft class that the Falcons put together, if I am a Falcons fan, I went from feeling great. I'm enthused. I've been shot with adrenaline for this team. You bring in Kirk Cousins. We had a terrible quarterback situation last year. If we had one, we might have went further. We bring in a quarterback. Now we just need the draft to be the icing on the cake, and you give me shit. If I was a Falcons fan, I would be upset. Now, I'm not saying there's not good players in this draft, but we're talking about the best of the best, sir. We're talking about the best of the best, sir. Braylon Trice from Washington is going to be a good player. JD from Notre Dame is going to be a good player. But when you look at how many defensive players that they took 5 defensive players, 5 of them. You get Michael Penix. You draft Casey Washington from Illinois, and then you draft Jace McClellan from Alabama. I don't know how much playing time Jace is going to see. The running back room is deep down there. So this was a terrible draft class. Listen, if you take away the Michael Penix pick, I don't even think we're talking about the Falcons as far as a draft class. It's a terrible draft class that just ruins a great offseason. It was a great offseason only to us to go to sleep to a fucking nightmare of a draft class. Moving on to the Vikings. They draft J.J. McCarthy with the 10th overall pick. I truly believe that, like I said in the beginning of the episode, this is billionaire fantasy football. And if you play fantasy football, you know once the first person takes a quarterback, then everybody else starts panicking and taking quarterbacks. Next thing you know, you don't take a quarterback, and you're left with, Jared Goff. No offense. But you know what I'm saying. So what I'm saying is, that's what they did. There was rumored that they were trying to trade for another quarterback. They were trying to trade for a Justin Herbert. That's what the rumored was. But they ended up settling for J.J. McCarthy. I've said it, and I'll continue to say it. There is no reason to have a lottery pick be Brock Purdy. J.J. McCarthy is Brock Purdy. Unless he was just not used in Michigan because they didn't need him to throw the ball over the place. But the last time I checked, if you're a top 10 pick, you don't go a whole half of playing football in college where they don't use your arm. And that happened against Penn State. Michigan did not throw the ball a single time in the second half. And you can say, well, maybe they didn't need to. I'm not hearing it. If you are a top 10 pick in the NFL draft, that means you are him. You are him all. You are the best with the best, sir, with honors. A top 10 quarterback, franchise changing. And now you tell me that he's not even, it's not a big deal if he doesn't start this year. Sam Darnold will go into training camp as a starter. What are we talking about? This is the same Sam Darnold that told us he's seeing ghosts in an NFL game. In an NFL game. This is, I don't know. This is what we are seeing in Minnesota might be the biggest fumble of a bag in the past, I don't know. Listen, if the Minnesota Vikings don't do something with having Justin Jefferson, with having Jordan Addison, TJ Hawkinson, Aaron Jones, Ty Chandler, if they don't do something with this core of offensive players, this will be a failed franchise move similar to what the Phoenix Suns are going to. Because when you look at all the talent they have, you needed to go get a player that's ready now. You don't need someone that you can hope for the future. The NFL is about right now. That whole division got better. You just watched the Detroit Lions go on an almost Super Bowl run. You watch the Chicago Bears get better. You watch the Green Bay Packers get better. You watch Jordan Love now take over the reins, and looks like they aren't going to be taking a step back. They aren't going to be waiting for Jordan Love. Jordan Love is here, and he's here now. J.J. McCarthy and Dallas Turner are going to be great picks. Kyrie Jackson, great corner from Oregon. But other than that, for me, it's the J.J. McCarthy pick. For me, that's why this is in my bottom 5. You didn't have to take him that early. And you know what? If Sam Darnold is your quarterback for this year, then why not wait for next year? That's my whole thing. That is my whole thing about this. You don't have to slit your wrist and sacrifice everything right now for this quarterback draft. You just don't have to. And they did. Another team that did the same thing, the Denver Broncos. I mean, Sean Payton comes out and says he was playing, hey, I was letting people, I was playing possum. I was playing mind games. Hey, bud, nobody was going to take Bo Nix in the first round. You played yourself. You played yourself. There was no mock draft, and there was no analyst. There was no one who said Bo Nix is a bona fide first rounder. He was great at Oregon in an air raid offense and in a pass-friendly league. He struggled in the SEC. The one good player they got, I do like Troy Franklin, and I do like Audric Estime. I do like those 2 picks. I think those 2 picks are going to be quality picks. But when I look at what they did in Denver, what are we doing? If you're going to rush and pick a quarterback with the 12th pick, you might as well not do it at all, especially in this draft. Outside of Caleb Williams, Drake May, and Jaden Daniels, if you could not get your hands on one of those 3, you should have not drafted a quarterback this early. There's no reason to. The Giants did an excellent thing. The Giants went out there and addressed their weaponry. They went out there and made sure they had weaponry. The Bears went out and made sure they had weaponry before they drafted a quarterback. The Patriots went out there and drafted weaponry when they got their quarterback. Jaden McDaniels already has weaponry. You hear what I'm telling you, right? The Broncos don't have weaponry. The Vikings have weaponry, but is J.J. McCarthy Himothy? These are the questions that need answers. Because if you're telling me J.J. McCarthy is Himothy, then that means the Michigan Wolverines were so good that they did not need him to throw the ball as much as someone who is Himothy would be throwing the ball in college. That's all you're telling me. It didn't make it make sense. The Buffalo Bills did something to me that was just asinine. It wasn't the Keon Coleman pick. I love Keon Coleman. I've been saying on this show, I think he's a top 5 wide receiver. He fell in the draft, and that's okay. Because he's in a good situation. He'll be a great wide receiver for Buffalo. Shout out to Keon Coleman. He's a great wide receiver, big body, vertical threat. But this is what the Buffalo Bills did for me. They went out, and I know they're missing defensive players. I know they lost a lot on the defense. But you need to get Josh Allen some real weapons. We look at the AFC. We look at the AFC East in this division. Okay? Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle, Raheem Mostert, and then Devin Achane. That's in Miami. You look at the Patriots, and they are under construction. You look at the Jets. Aaron Rodgers, two good running backs, Garrett Wilson. This is a division that has offensive firepower, is my point. And right now, I don't see enough offensive firepower. I mean, I understand you're going to run the ball a little bit more. I mean, it's pretty obvious. If you don't know that, I mean, welcome to Earth. But the Buffalo Bills will have more of an emphasis on running the football, a lot more QB design runs. So for fantasy football, we are looking at James Cook high. We are looking at James Cook high in drafts because of the simple aspect. They are going to run the ball more in Buffalo. We are looking at Dalton Kincaid high because he's going to get a lot more check down catches in Buffalo. Josh Allen will get more rushing touchdowns. I'm just giving you the facts of life. That's why you let your number one wide receiver go, because you're telling him, you know what, bud, I think we're going to run the ball a little bit more. The last team on my bottom five, the Jacksonville Jaguars, to me, I don't understand why we're not getting Trevor Lawrence more help. And I know he has Christian Kirk. I know he has Evan Ingram. I know he has Travis Etienne. But at the end of the day, you need more. You need more in that division. You go out there, you get Brian Thompson Jr., and that's good. Brian Thomas Jr. is a very good wide receiver from LSU, wide receiver U. And if you don't believe that, just go look at the numbers, go argue with yourself. But Brian Thomas is going to be a very good acquisition for this offense. But I just wanted them to go out there and get a little bit more. You know, outside of Cam Little, you draft two offensive players, skill position. You draft an offensive tackle. I just think the Jacksonville Jaguars could have got more skill position help. I think they could have got more wide receiver help. But enough with the shit bags. Enough with the vegetables. Can we get to some meatballs? Can we get to some filet mignons? Can we get to some prime rib? Can we get to some tomahawk steak? Can we get to the goods? That's what I'm saying. This is my top 5 draft classes, and this is in no order. But these are the draft classes that when I look at, I say, that's a team. Right there, that's a team. Right there you're looking at, that's a team that wants to win. That's a team that's competing for a championship. That's a GM that I like the cut of his jib. And when I look at the top 5, my top 5, when I look at the New York Giants, I've said it, I'll say it again. The New York Giants did what was needed. They got Daniel Jones some help. Malik Nabers is going to be great for the New York Giants. The last LSU wide receiver they got was Odell Beckham Jr., and we saw what he did for them. I think Malik Nabers will be able to do a little bit more because he's a little bit faster, a little bit bigger. And I think Daniel Jones has a hard-on to be great. I think the guy is erect to get up to go to work in the morning. That's what I think. I like the New York Giants. I like this. I like Tyler Nubin. I am a Big Ten supporter, so I watched a lot of Minnesota football. The guy can fly around. He makes plays. Drew from Kentucky, another good one. This is a good draft class, folks. Good draft class. Tyron Tracy, once again, another Big Ten guy. I'm telling you, watch out for the New York Football Giants because for me, this is why it's smart. Because this is what I think they're going to do. I think the Giants understand the task at hand. I think the Giants know who will be eligible for the NFL draft in 2 years. And if you don't know who I'm talking about, that is Arch Manning. So I'm putting it out there now before anybody else steals the story. You heard it here first on That Guy Jig. The New York Giants will start tanking. If they need to, they will start tanking. Which I believe that's why they didn't get a quarterback. They will start tanking for Arch Manning. He is coming up, and he's coming up, and he'll be eligible to be drafted. Mark my words. Arch Manning will be a New York Giant. They will line themselves up. They will get in position. They will get all these good receivers. They'll get what they can together. Because after next year, remember, Daniel Jones is no cap hit if they cut him. So you cut Daniel Jones. You get rid of him. You bring in a quarterback for a year, maybe 2. But then when Arch comes out, that's where he's going. You heard it here first. But conspiracy theories aside, the New York Giants had a great draft, and I expect their offense to improve. I expect Daniel Jones to be on your fantasy football radar. Because if they can continue to bring in a little more help, watch out for the New York Giants. Another team that I am extremely proud of for a great draft. Look no further than the New England Patriots. You get Drake May, and then you get Jalen Polk. That is such a great pick at wide receiver from Washington. You follow that up with 2 offensive linemen, one from Penn State, one from A&M. But this pick, Javon Baker, UCF, he is going to be a demon on the football field. That right there, that Javon Baker Drake May combination, he's a receiver that Drake May is going to fall in love with because he's the type of wide receiver that Drake May likes. That's Drake May's type of wide receiver. If you haven't seen Javon Baker play in the Big 12, UCF, go look up some highlight tapes. I'm sure they have them on the YouTube. But when I look at the Patriots, I don't look for them to be just great. I don't look for them to be amazing, but I do look for them to be a solid square. A solid square foundation that you can build upon. I do like this draft class. The Patriots make my top 5. I like what they're doing post-Belichick. I like the Joe Milton project. I like that. You know, the guy can't throw a 15-yard out route. He can't throw a 15-yard dig, but the guy can launch a football to the Appalachian Mountains, to the Rockies. I've seen it. I've seen it done. But another team, listen, we're still in the top 5 that you want to give a hot 5. And listen, I have a couple honorable mentions too. But for the Pittsburgh Steelers, listen to me. It's going to be Mike Tomlin's revenge tour. This is the revenge of Mike Tomlin and Russell Wilson. They're drafting 2 offensive linemen, one from Washington and one from West Virginia. If you haven't seen these guys play, please go watch them. Please go watch them. These are some good offensive linemen. And you know they're good offensive linemen when the Pittsburgh Steelers draft them. If you're a center and you get drafted by the Pittsburgh Steelers, you feel great. If you haven't seen what they've done with the Pounceys, then I don't know where you've been. Roman Wilson was one of these wide receivers that I was like, man, depending on the situation. And let me tell you something. If he's the receiver that you're looking for to replace a Deontay drop-the-ball Johnson, then yes, this is your guy. Roman Wilson, Michigan, this is your guy. He's a route technician. He's kind of like a Chris Olave. He's a Chris Olave, just not Chris Olave. But they're the same mold. They're the same mold. But the steal for me, Peyton Wilson, the linebacker from North Carolina State, has had a lot of injuries. But you know who talks about him? Luke Kuechly. He says that this guy is good, that this guy is going to be the man. And listen, if Luke says it, I'm going to believe it because Luke was a motherfucker on the field. If you ain't get to see him play, I'm sorry. I'm sorry for your eyeballs. But that guy made people who didn't play football scared because he was hitting people that hard and he was just flying around. So I believe anybody he puts a badge on, I'm with. The Philadelphia Eagles did it. If you didn't see the master class that GM put on, then what were you looking at? That's my question. Because they get the 2 best corners in the draft. Then they get Will Shipley for the running back room and Ainias Smith from Texas A&M. It's a good wide receiver. And especially with Johnny Wilson from Florida State, these are 2 solid wide receivers and a solid running back that you got in the 4th round. That's okay. If this is what Will Shipley is going to be a solid running back, and I expect him to compete for carries. He can catch the ball out the backfield, and he can run the ball. He was Clemson's workhorse this year. He proved that he could be a workhorse and not be injured. I like that Will Shipley pick. Listen, the first round, I'm just going to be real with you, man. The first round is for ratings. I'm not saying that the guys don't deserve it and any of that crap that you can try to twist. But what I'm telling you is, man, the meat, the potatoes, the bulk, 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th, those rounds are where you get some of the best players that this game's ever seen. And I like the Eagles. The Eagles have a great draft class. I look forward to seeing this gel in. You know, they didn't get anybody from Georgia this year. I think that might be a record. They need to go back and look and see when was the last time they went without picking Georgia players. I got one more, and this one right here is this is pretty obvious, man. The Kansas City Chiefs. The Kansas City Chiefs, man. How did we allow them once again, and by we, I'm talking about you GMs out there playing fantasy football, how did you allow them to come away with this haul? How did you allow them to get Xavier Worthy, the fastest guy in the draft? How did you allow them to get Jared Wiley? If you do not know who Jared Wiley is, Jared Wiley and Sanders. Sanders went to Texas. Those are my top two tight ends out of this year's draft class. Sanders being a very good wide receiver. You got to watch him, University of Texas. But Wiley, man, Jared Wiley is just – he's such a big body. He's athletic. He's long. He's just big. A nice, solid target. I think he's going to be a very good weapon. He's learning from the best. He's learning from the best. And and that pick right there, the Xavier Worthy pick, but the Jared Wiley pick is the one for me. And we probably won't hear much from him because he is behind one of the greatest of all times, if not the greatest of all time. But when we do hear from him, it will be loud. Honorable mention, I got two of them. We got the Bears, Caleb Williams, of course, Romeo Oduze, and you draft an offensive tackle. I just like it. I like what they've done in the offseason. The Falcons, you should have done something to figure out what the Bears were doing, because that's how you do it. That's how you not only did you fluff your fan base to get them ready for the draft, but then you allowed them to ejaculate. See, what the Falcons did was they fluffed before the draft, but then they just said, no, never mind, I'm good. Now Falcon fans have blue balls, and they have to wait until the season starts to release. That release may not come. But when I'm looking around at my second one is going to have to go to the Baltimore Ravens. I like what the Ravens did, and this is why they're on my honorable mention. When you look at the offensive tackle, they got a receiver. They did things that they needed to do to improve, but they didn't go overzealous. They didn't go overboard. They didn't jump the gun. They let the game come to them. And that's why they're my honorable mention. You go out there and you get Nate Wiggins. You go out there and you get Roger from Washington, who was a great offensive tackle. Probably one of my favorites. I watched him a few times. Now, Isaac from Penn State, once again, I like Big Ten football. That kid can play. But my pick for them, the steal for them, Tez Walker. Tez Walker is going to be the steal for them. If Tez Walker can do what Tez Walker was doing in college in the NFL, which I know the NFL is the best of the best, but this guy is pretty good. If he had more film, if the NCAA wasn't, trying to play judge, jury, executioner, pimp, and prostitute, then he would have been able to be on the field a little bit earlier and been able to get more film on film. But he didn't. He didn't get more film on film because of the NCAA. So now he's going to take the NFL by surprise. But these are my bottom five, my top five, my honorable mentions, and everybody else out there, congratulations. If you made it to the NFL draft, if you got drafted, if your name got selected, congratulations to you and your family. And to the free agents out there, keep striving for greatness. But shout out to all the listeners, and I appreciate you. And once again, this is That Guy Jig Sports Podcast. I am him, JIG. Subscribe, rate, and review. Tell a friend to tell a friend. Let's all be friends. Don't forget to get on that Instagram page for all updates and all just random daily news. Once again, this is That Guy Jig. I am him, JIG. Thanks for listening. Peace.